The Avengers have always been Earth's first line of defense, but behind their heroic facade, there are some shocking secrets. Today on CBR, we tell you the 10 biggest secrets of the Avengers. Iron Man's incredible wealth has always been a major backbone for the Avengers. From funding missions to building high-tech HQs, Tony Stark has played a critical role in supporting the team. Beyond the money, he's also one of the original founders and a key player in their success. This makes him an obvious target for someone like Kang the Conqueror. Kang, a time-traveling villain with a deep obsession for taking down the Avengers, quickly realized that brute force wasn't the answer. No matter how many times he attacked, the Avengers always found a way to win, so he decided to change tactics. Instead of attacking from the outside, he targeted them from within, manipulating their most trusted member, Iron Man. Using his knowledge of time travel, Kang sought to influence Tony Stark's decisions over time. Kang interfered with Tony's choices in subtle ways, nudging him toward decisions that ultimately weakened the Avengers. This manipulation, however, wasn't something the team could immediately detect. It was a slow, strategic game that spanned years, with the effects becoming apparent only as the team started to fall apart. The Avengers decided not to make public the fact that Tony Stark had been subtly influenced over the years. They feared that such a revelation would shatter the team's image and tarnish Tony's legacy. While the desire to protect Tony is understandable, since he is their colleague and friend, this decision still shows the Avengers prioritizing their own image over the truth. This move towards secrecy over transparency with the public becomes a defining theme for the Avengers throughout the franchise as well. The Avengers Unity Squad always felt like a case of too little, too late. For years, the Avengers didn't really lift a finger for mutant kind. The Avengers Unity Squad was meant to rectify this mistake, but they did not really make a strong enough stand for their mutant allies. When they finally stepped up, after Cyclops went full Dark Phoenix and the world was already spiraling, it felt more like damage control than real allyship. The Avengers Unity Squad ultimately felt like slapping super glue on a gushing pipe and hoping for the best. Right from the start, the Unity Squad was dealing with serious baggage. Some original Avengers backed Scarlet Witch after her "No More Mutants" moment, where she wiped out the powers of nearly 1 million mutants. She acted like it was no big deal, and the X-Men weren't exactly thrilled about that. Trust was fragile at best, even between the members of the team. Sensing all the tension, the Apocalypse twins, children of Archangel and products of a dark future, used that division to tear everything apart. They manipulated events so perfectly that Earth ended up destroyed by the Celestials. But before it was all over, they had Scarlet Witch cast a massive spell to save only mutants and relocate them to a new world, Planet X. In the end, Havoc, Wasp, Beast, and the remaining Uncanny Avengers traveled back in time with Kang's help to stop it all. They erased Planet X from existence to restore the timeline and kept it all under wraps. Just another secret swept under the rug to protect the fragile peace between mutants and the world. The Avengers have faced some of the most powerful enemies in the universe, but the Celestials are in a league of their own. These ancient cosmic beings are essentially gods of the universe, vastly powerful, mysterious, and responsible for manipulating the evolution of life across countless planets. Earth is just one of many worlds they've influenced over the eons. While the Avengers were aware of the Celestials' involvement with Earth, mainly through the Eternals, a race they created, they never fully understood the depth of that connection. It was only later that they learned the shocking truth. Humanity's existence is directly tied to the death of a Celestial, known as the Progenitor. The Progenitor, a Celestial, crash-landed on early Earth millions of years ago while infected with a cosmic disease. This infection spread to the planet, causing significant changes in its evolutionary path. Essentially, the disease altered Earth's genetic makeup, paving the way for the rise of human life, superhumans, and the extraordinary abilities that would eventually emerge. In a sense, humanity owes its existence to the tragic death of a Celestial, whose sickness inadvertently shaped the course of life on Earth. The story became even more complex when Loki manipulated events that led to the return of the Dark Celestials, corrupted versions of their kind. These Dark Celestials came to Earth seeking the Progenitor's remains, believing they could harness its power. The Avengers fought to stop this threat, but they kept the truth about the Progenitor and the Celestials' role in human evolution hidden from the public. Some secrets they decided were too dangerous to reveal. The Dark Avengers were a masterclass in lies and manipulation, the crown jewel of Norman Osborn's twisted little empire during the Dark Reign era. After managing to kill the Skrull Queen Varanki during the whole secret invasion mess, Osborn somehow came out looking like a hero. Incredibly, the government handed him the keys to the kingdom, control over S.H.I.E.L.D., the superhero initiative, and even the Avengers. Naturally, he tore it all down and rebuilt it in his own image. S.H.I.E.L.D. became Hammer, the Hood and his crime syndicate got plugged into the initiative, and Osborn assembled a brand new team of Avengers. Only instead of heroes, he filled it with villains in disguise. Moonstone became the new Ms. Marvel, Bullseye suited up as Hawkeye, Venom, the Mac Gargan version, formerly the Scorpion, wore Spider-Man's colors, and Daken, Wolverine's son, stepped into his dad's shoes, literally. Norman himself threw on some high-tech Iron Patriot armor, mashing up Iron Man and Captain America's look to play the part of team leader and national icon. The public totally fooled. As far as they knew, these were Earth's mightiest heroes. What they didn't realize was that their new protectors were villains, killers, and unstable mercenaries. Osborn kept their real identities hidden and used the team as his personal Black Ops unit, striking fear and crushing opposition while pretending to be saviors. It all started with something that should have been joyful. Wanda and Vision, against all odds, had children. Billy and Tommy were miracle babies, born from Wanda's magic. The catch? They weren't exactly real in the traditional sense. Unbeknownst to Wanda, she had used fragments of Mephisto's soul, Marvel's devil, to create her sons. For a while, everything seemed fine, but reality has a way of catching up. When the truth came out, the Avengers were horrified. Instead of helping Wanda cope, they allowed Agatha Harkness to magically wipe the whole memory of her children from Wanda's mind, making it seem like they never existed. During a casual chat, Wasp accidentally reminded Wanda about her children, and that tiny slip unraveled everything. Wanda's already fragile mental state broke completely. First, she killed Agatha in a fit of rage. Then she hijacked Vision's body and a Quinjet, causing massive destruction and crashing them into Avengers Mansion, killing Scott Lang, Ant-Man, in the process. But she wasn't done. Wanda created a horde of Ultrons using Vision's body, forcing the Avengers into a brutal fight. Then, in a final act of chaos, she summoned the team's greatest foes from thin air. Illusions, perhaps, but deadly ones. Hawkeye died in the aftermath of Wanda's rampage, and the team was left broken, both physically and emotionally. All of this might have been avoided if the Avengers had just trusted Wanda to handle the truth. This level of mistrust is especially poignant since both Billy and Tommy did actually exist after all. Their souls were just sent into the bodies of other children. Thus, if Wanda had been told the truth from the start, she may have been able to find her children sooner and been a stronger presence in their lives. The Illuminati have always been one of Marvel's most controversial secret squads. On paper, they were supposed to be the smartest minds in the world coming together to quietly handle the biggest threats. In reality, they made a mess more often than not, from sending Hulk into space to poking the Skrulls and indirectly setting off secret invasion. The Illuminati had a rough track record. Still, when the multiverse started collapsing in on itself, they made a comeback. This time, the threat was bigger than anything they'd ever faced. Incursions, which were alternate Earths crashing into each other, one by one, wiping out universes. If one Earth weren't destroyed during the collision, both entire universes would go poof. So yeah, pretty bad. The new Illuminati regrouped in total secrecy, even more hidden than before. Led by Iron Man and Black Panther, the roster included heavy hitters like Doctor Strange, Reed Richards, Namor, Black Bolt, and Beast. They had to make the impossible choice over and over again, destroying another Earth to save their own. It wasn't pretty, and it definitely wasn't heroic, but they thought it was necessary, and despite all their power and brains, they failed. The final incursion between Earth 616 and Earth 1610, the Ultimate Universe, brought everything crashing down. Still, they tried to do what no one else could. Whether that makes them villains or martyrs depends on how you look at it. Secret Invasion was one of the most shocking events to hit the Marvel Universe, but the Avengers had a front row seat to the beginning of it all. The whole mess started when the new Avengers were called to Japan by Echo, who had noticed something weird happening in the Japanese underworld. The Hand, a notorious ninja cult, was making moves, and for some reason, Elektra was at the helm. The new Avengers confronted Elektra and the Hand, but things took a wild turn when Echo, in a fight with Elektra, seemingly killed her. When the Avengers went to check on the body, they made a jaw-dropping discovery. Elektra's corpse didn't stay dead. It transformed back into its true form, a Skrull. The Skrulls had infiltrated Earth in plain sight, and this was just the beginning. Naturally, the new Avengers freaked out. They didn't tell anyone about what they'd found because, well, who could they trust? Everyone was a potential Skrull, and the last thing they wanted was mass panic. The Skrull Queen, Veronka, who had been masquerading as Spider-Woman all along, secretly took the corpse to Tony Stark. Stark, ever the tactician, kept this secret from S.H.I.E.L.D. and the rest of the world. But his silence only bought the Skrulls more time to infiltrate key positions on Earth. Paranoia spread like wildfire. backfire. The heroes were isolated, suspicious of each other, and scrambling to figure out who was real and who wasn't. The Skrulls were doing their thing, quietly replacing key figures in government, the Avengers, and other organizations. By the time the heroes came together to stop them, the invasion had already gotten way out of hand. It wasn't until later that the full scale of the Skrull plot was revealed, and by then, the damage was done. The Skrull invasion was yet another example of the Avengers choosing to keep secrets for the people's protection that backfired and made things worse for everyone involved. Norman Osborn's Dark Reign was a period of chaos and manipulation, and one of his most dangerous moves involved making a deal with the Void, the dark, destructive side of the Sentry. Osborn had control of his own Avengers team, including key members from Iron Man's mighty Avengers, but it was the Sentry who proved to be the most valuable and dangerous asset. Robert Reynolds, the man behind the Sentry, had long struggled with the Void, a monstrous force of pure chaos that lived within him. The Void was essentially the Sentry's dark half, a being of unimaginable destruction. Osborn, being the manipulative genius that he was, saw an opportunity. He began to control the Sentry by striking a deal with the Void. With the Void growing more powerful and taking over Reynolds' mind more often, Osborn used it as a weapon to crush anyone who got in his way. The Void quickly became Osborn's personal attack dog. With this godlike being at his disposal, Osborn had a weapon capable of leveling entire cities. He would send the Sentry, under the full control of the Void, on missions to wipe out enemies, intimidate rivals, and break anyone who dared to challenge his reign. It was a brilliant, if terrifying, strategy, but things went wrong. The more Osborn used the Void, the more the destructive entity gained control over the Sentry. Eventually, the Void broke free, fully overtaking Robert Reynolds. What was once a weapon under Osborn's control became a ticking time bomb. The Avengers had no choice but to battle the Void in a desperate attempt to stop the rampaging force of destruction, all because Osborn had let the Void get too powerful. Captain America has always stood for truth and justice, but when the multiverse was on the brink of destruction due to the incursions, even Steve Rogers found himself caught in a tough spot. The Illuminati, a secret group of the world's most brilliant minds, decided that the only way to save Earth-16 was to destroy the other Earth colliding with it. It was a terrible decision, but one they believed was necessary to prevent the collapse of the entire multiverse. Captain America, who had never been one to shy away from hard choices, reluctantly joined the Illuminati, hoping that his presence would steer the group towards a more ethical path. However, when Cap discovered the full scope of their plan to destroy the other Earth, he couldn't stand by it. His sense of duty to the people of Earth led him to announce that he would reveal the truth of the incursions and their drastic plan to the world. This wasn't a plan the Illuminati could afford to have exposed. Their decision was one they couldn't risk getting out to the public, especially since it involved the mass destruction of another Earth. So, in one of the most brutal moves they ever made, the Illuminati took action to silence Steve. Doctor Strange, using his magical abilities, mind-wiped Captain America. He erased Steve's memories of being part of the Illuminati altogether, effectively making him forget that the multiverse was collapsing and that he'd been involved in such a morally gray decision. While this may seem small compared to some of the more extreme actions the Illuminati would take later, it was a deeply personal betrayal. The Illuminati had not only deceived the world, but had done something terrible to a friend, someone they should have been able to trust. It marked the beginning of a series of moral compromises that would eventually lead to the Illuminati's downfall. Marvel's multiverse is enormous, but even something that vast isn't immune to falling apart. The incursions were the first sign that something was wrong. The Engineers, a mysterious offshoot of the Builders, an ancient race responsible for creating structures that connected universes, noticed the collapse before anyone else. It was their job to maintain the stability of the multiverse, so when they saw the first cracks appear, they knew the threat was real. Eventually, Earth's smartest heroes, including Tony Stark, Black Panther, and Doctor Strange, realized that the multiverse was unraveling and that it wasn't just an isolated incident. The incursions were the cause of the multiverse's destruction. Two universes would collide, and when they did, one had to be destroyed for the other to survive. The smartest minds on Earth didn't have much of a choice, so the Illuminati was reformed to handle the problem. But the solution was grim. In order to save their own Earth, the Illuminati decided to destroy the incoming Earths that were on a collision course force with theirs. This meant stockpiling powerful weapons, including planet-killing devices, in order to stop the incursions before they could fully merge with Earth-616. The stakes were high, and no one really knew how to stop the whole thing from spiraling out of control. The Illuminati tried their best to keep this all a secret, fearing panic and chaos if the public knew the truth. Dr. Doom, ever the mastermind, discovered the truth about the incursions and saw it as his chance to take control. But even the Illuminati's greatest minds couldn't save the multiverse. Ultimately, it was Dr. Doom, Doctor Strange, and Molecule Man who had to steal the power of the Beyonders, godlike beings who had been manipulating the incursions all along to prevent the total collapse of reality itself.
Earth's mightiest heroes have some of the most amazing superpowers in the universe. I mean, who doesn't get goosebumps whenever Thor fries his enemies with lightning or Doctor Strange does his hands twirly thing? It's incredible. But just because the Avengers have powers that allow them to save the world every other week doesn't mean they're all winners. Sometimes being an all-powerful superhero who's been around for decades means you accumulate some pretty useless abilities. So what are some of the Avengers' worst superpowers? Have they ever helped them in a fight, and just what situation would they use them in? Well, let's get into it right now. So I want to kick this off by talking about the late great Tony Stark. Now, his arc in the MCU basically bookended the first 3 phases of this superhero franchise. He went from a genius billionaire playboy weapons dealer to a genius billionaire playboy philanthropist superhero. That's a pretty solid transformation, and although he was accused early on of never being the guy to make the sacrifice play, he proved on a few occasions that he was willing to give his life for others. But I know what you're about to say to me. Hey, CBR voice, this video is all about useless Avenger powers and Tony Stark doesn't have any powers. Well, to that I say you're technically right. Tony Stark is an average human being, unless you count the Extremist storyline where the Extremist tech was stored in his bones, but on the whole, he's just a super intelligent guy with rockin' facial hair. But he does make an abundance of Iron Man suits and has made some incredible upgrades to them over the years. Though, as with anything, there will always be a few duds here and there. So I'm going to talk about Tony Stark's most useless Iron Man suit for this entry, and that's gotta be his stealth armor. Right off the bat, what about Tony Stark screams stealthy to you? He's the type of flashy personality who likes to announce at press conferences that he's Iron Man and enter battles with literal gods blasting AC/DC music. So yeah, stealth isn't Tony's cup of tea. But that doesn't mean he never tried. In the comics, Tony tried out the Model 7 armor for secret missions, but it lacks all the fundamentals you would expect from an Iron Man suit. It prioritizes concealment over offense, which means the original version had absolutely no weapons system installed, and it was overall much flimsier and fragile than your normal Iron Man armor. Seriously, should you ever look at an Iron Man suit and think it's flimsy? No, that defeats the whole purpose of Iron Man and limits what we love about Tony the character. So that's why this suit is the most useless in Tony's arsenal. Steve Rogers is the perfect symbol for what a superhero should be. He wasn't a genius billionaire playboy who suddenly went through a life-changing altercation. He wasn't born into royalty in Asgard. No, he was just a scrawny kid from Brooklyn who desperately wanted to serve his country during World War II. Even though he had the body of a child not old enough to see R-rated movies yet, he had a more important quality to him: a good heart. Well, to be honest, not in the literal sense. When he was still a pipsqueak, we learned he had asthma, scarlet fever, rheumatic fever, high blood pressure, and overall heart trouble. So, I mean, he figuratively had a good heart. But it turns out that was all he needed to become one of the greatest Avengers ever. You see, an important element of the Super Soldier Serum is how it amplifies what's already in your heart. If you're a good person, it's going to make you even more good. But if you have any selfishness or dream of glory, then Erskine's formula will probably warp your mind into something unrecognizable. Just look at US Agent and his descent into madness. Anyways, Steve got the Super Soldier Serum and definitely filled out. His body grew into peak hunk, and he gained an abundance of superpowers like super strength, enhanced speed, stamina, and overall durability. He's not quite bulletproof, but in the MCU, every villain he's ever faced has had terrible aim, so I guess that's not a serious problem. But I guess seriously, what happens if someone unloaded a machine gun into the MCU's Steve Rogers? I've always wondered that. And I guess he also got the superpower to be excellent at math? Yeah, it's been said his mind works quicker now, and he can analyze situations better than your normal person, but I still don't understand how he can throw the shield with such pinpoint accuracy and have it bounce around like it's in a pinball machine before returning to his arm. But hey, Sam Wilson and US Agent could do this too, so I guess it's not a super soldier thing. But all those super soldier powers I've mentioned are incredible, but that doesn't mean it's all perfect. It does come with one useless power that Cap probably wishes it wouldn't. He can't get drunk. The serum burns through his metabolism so fast and heals him in such a way where alcohol won't have a lasting effect on the super soldier. And that's a serious bummer. That's only useful if Captain America was a big spy type of person and liked to infiltrate situations. If that was the case, he could pretend to drink a lot and pretend to be drunk in order to give himself the upper hand. But seriously, it's Captain America. The guy is more of a let's go into the situation directly instead of being super stealthy. So that makes this power useless to him. It would serve Black Widow or Hawkeye better than Steve. Now all it does is create a horrible side effect of when he's around all his other Avengers who are partying it up and goofing around, he can't let loose a little bit. But of course that means no hangover ever, which is a nice consolation prize, I guess. Spider-Man does whatever a spider can. Say what you will, but I think Spider-Man has the best theme song out of any Marvel hero. Okay, fine, Captain America's theme song comes a close second. Anyways, Spider-Man is a fan favorite character for a reason. On one hand, you have the super relatable Peter Parker, whose constant struggle to pay his bills and to live a semi-normal life is often disrupted by his dedication to saving New York from criminals. But there's always a sense with Spider-Man that whenever he does win, he often loses in some way, which makes his commitment to using his great power for great responsibility even more admirable. It's why we love the character so much, why there's been so many reboots, and why Marvel and Sony are constantly in an endless war trying to figure out how to share the rights to the character. Power-wise, as mentioned, Spider-Man can do whatever a spider can, meaning he can swing from a web that he makes himself in almost all incarnations except for the Sam Raimi Spider-Man movies. He's super strong, agile, durable, sarcastic, and has a spider sense that helps him avoid danger. You know, just like all spiders have. It's why whenever you see a spider on your wall and you turn your back for 1 second to grab a shoe or something to smash it with, and then you turn back and the spider is gone. Yeah, just so you know, that's all because the spider sensed you were about to kill it and ran away and will probably seek revenge against you while you're sleeping, so keep that in mind. But seriously, Spider-Man is an incredible hero and one of the best around. So what would I say is Spider-Man's most useless power? Well, I think it's his ability to talk to spiders. Now, granted, this is a power that isn't common and only shows itself in certain comics and certain situations. But the Peter Parker character has been able to talk to spiders in particular circumstances. And why do I think this is useless? Well, for one, he's just talking to spiders. It's not like he can control a spider army to do his bidding. But then again, if you could do that, then I would consider him more of a villain, right? Like if you saw a hero controlling an army of spiders, it wouldn't matter if that hero is super quippy and likable. You'd be terrified. Did you know the Hulk can see ghosts? It's true. And if you're thinking, what could a rampaging, sort of mindless rage monster who only gets stronger the angrier he gets do with the ability to see ghosts? Well, pretty much nothing. The Hulk's whole character is that he's an insanely powerful brute that isn't afraid to punch and smash anything in his path. It doesn't matter if it's giant Chitauri space worms, huge fire demons, or even Thor himself. Hulk just likes to fight, which is why I think his ability to see ghosts is his most useless power. Now, mostly the ghost the Hulk sees is that of his father, a character that hasn't been introduced in the MCU, but also this ability has helped Hulk see Doctor Strange while the character was in the astral plane, which would just be trippy to see in the MCU. Imagine Doctor Strange floating around in his astral projection form, and then the Hulk of all people can see him and interact with him. It's a truly bizarre power that you wouldn't expect from the Hulk, right? Like if I told you the Hulk could harden his skin into tough scales or punch a planet into making it explode, you'd probably believe that, right? Because it fits into what we think about the Hulk. But if I tell you he can see ghosts, that's definitely a head scratcher. Oh, just don't tell Korg, okay? I heard he hates spooky ghosts. For a long time, Hawkeye was the Avenger who was the butt of everyone's jokes. Yes, that's because he's mainly just a bow and arrow guy standing next to Iron Man, Captain America, Thor, and the Hulk, but you didn't see the same type of jokes being made toward Black Widow. And I think that's mainly because Hawkeye had such a lackluster debut in the MCU. After his cameo in Thor, Hawkeye got a leading role in the Avengers, but he spent most of that film's runtime as a brainwashed goon for Loki. And even though he displayed why he was so dangerous dangerous as a villain. I mean, he took down the helicarrier with like one arrow, which I guess is more of a design flaw for the helicarrier than indicative of Hawkeye's skill, but whatever. The next few appearances really tried to build up Hawkeye, almost to the point where Age of Ultron often felt like Hawkeye and his amazing friends saved the day. Seriously, Clint got all the best lines, the best moments, was called the heart of the team, etc. in that movie. And now he's getting his own Disney Plus show? Who would have thought, right? But Hawkeye is a lot like Iron Man, where he doesn't have powers, so I'm going to use this entry to talk about what I think is Hawkeye's most useless arrow. The legendary Archer has a whole assortment of regular and trick arrows. From the MCU, we've seen explosive arrows, hacker arrows, and even powerful force field arrows that were used to briefly trap Vision. And the comics have an even wider array with things like acid arrows, net arrows, sonar arrows, just basically a whole lot of arrows. But I think his most useless has got to be the boomerang arrow. I'm sorry, although it's fun to see an arrow miss but then circle around and come back, I think that takes away a bit of the allure of seeing Hawkeye have amazing accuracy. Plus, if he's making arrows into boomerangs, then Captain Boomerang will jump universes to have a serious talk about copyright infringement. Although modern Thor comics have made it so Thor is his own character, that wasn't always the case. Back in the early days of Thor comics, Thor did have a secret identity and posed as the human Donald Blake. What happened was, much like we saw in the Thor movie, Thor was sent to Earth to learn how to become worthy, only he didn't have the memories of Thor. He thought he was just a human named Donald Blake. And once Thor learned of his true identity, he used his hammer to transform back and forth from Thor to Donald Blake when the character wanted to have an alter ego on Earth. Now, again, modern stories have abandoned this plot point and have even made Donald Blake his own separate character apart from Thor. So I would call the ability to transform into a human secret identity is Thor's most useless power. I mean, come on, it has to be, right? Thor has one of the most impressive skill sets out of any Avenger with his godlike strength, speed, durability, and his lightning skills. He could easily make the case for why he's the most powerful Avenger. So that's why I think any power that transforms him out of his Asgardian form and into a plain old human body is his most useless. Plus, if you look like Chris Hemsworth, then why in the world would you want to try to conceal your identity? It just doesn't make sense, people. If Scott Lang was a little more of a ruthless strategist and less of a goofy everyman, then Ant-Man would be the most powerful Avenger. The technology that Scott has at his disposal is incredible, and while yes, it relates to just shrinking and growing, it makes Scott almost unbeatable, and able to beat just about any Avenger. The recent What If Disney Plus show showed us that Ant-Man can eliminate any hero with ease, including the Hulk, who basically has been shown to be near indestructible. So that's why when it comes to Ant-Man, his most useless power is the fact that he can amplify his voice. Really, this power is just a way to help people hear him when he's microscopic. But really, that power has become useless in the modern age since he has a built-in comms device in his helmet. That makes the need to amplify his voice so people can hear him absolutely pointless. Thanks to modern technology for the upgrade. Still, I guess it would be a little frightening for people to suddenly hear a booming voice coming from a little dust speck on your counter, right? Even so, given everything else Ant-Man can do, the amplified voice is nothing. Okay, Doctor Strange's most useless power is only useless in the MCU for now, but could change depending on who the villain is for Doctor Strange in the Multiverse of Madness. Really, what I'm trying to do is will Nightmare into existence, okay? I'm hoping by highlighting how useless Doctor Strange's sleep protection ability is now, that will spur an angry Multiverse of Madness writer, who are avid watchers of these videos I'm sure, to write Nightmare into the movie. So remember, if Nightmare shows up, thank CBR. Anyways, yes, right now Doctor Strange's most useless power is his sleep protection spell. In the comics, he uses this to help keep him safe while sleeping, but I think it's his most useless power because he has to keep reapplying it every time he goes to sleep. You would think a powerful sorcerer like Strange would come up with a long-lasting spell, right? Also, in the MCU, his sleep protection spell is a little useless because any outside threat that tries to hurt Strange when he's passed out will immediately get a face full of cloak, thanks to the cloak of levitation that's always around Strange and protecting him. Scarlet Witch had a rocky start in the MCU, but now not only is she a major player, but she's also potentially the most powerful being on Earth. Her chaos magic has the ability to rewrite reality itself, and the last we saw her, she was working hard at understanding and controlling her power, which will only make her stronger the next time we see her. So, given that her chaos magic can reshape the multiverse as we know it, I want to highlight a useless power from the early comic days of Scarlet Witch. Back when the character was first created, a lot of her her abilities revolved around her causing bad luck for the people around her. Gotta wake up early for a big meeting? Whoops, your alarm clock became unplugged overnight. You wanna watch a Thor movie on Disney Plus? Whoops, right when you turn it on, the only one available to stream is Thor: The Dark World. So, given all that Scarlet Witch has become, and as she continues to grow more powerful, I'm gonna chalk up her bad luck abilities as her most useless power. Did you know Vision is a master of hand-to-hand combat? That's one of his powers, but honestly, I find that incredibly useless when you're an all-powerful vibranium synthezoid who harnesses the Mind Stone most of the time to create devastating blasts that can cut Mad Titans in half and paralyze Tony Stark's friends. Vision can also shapeshift, change his density, and phase through solid objects, and all of those make it so that really Vision will never have to be in a fistfight. Like, so what if he's a master in all kinds of martial arts? What does that matter? It's not like if he's fighting another martial arts master that they're going to be in the same league as Vision, because really, Vision fights heavy hitters where his hand-to-hand combat skills aren't the deciding factor in the fight. So in that regard, it's the most useless.
The Marvel Cinematic Universe is filled with cool technical gadgets, mystical weapons, and some of the most iconic items around. But while our heroes typically stick to their own skill sets, they've had to rely on various weapons that weren't very familiar from time to time. Let's take a look at some of the most notable moments when our heroes got their hands on someone else's favorite toy in the heat of battle. Mjolnir. The MCU has tons of fancy gadgets made out of super strong materials like vibranium. But there's just something about Thor's hammer that has always captivated our imaginations. Maybe it's the vague worthy requirement of wielding it. Admit it, you've always wanted to try picking it up. Or maybe it's the fact that using it means harnessing the power of a god. Whatever the reason, we completely understand why everyone wants to use it, but since we can't do it ourselves, most of us have been super eager to see Captain America do it on the big screen. After all, he's thrown it around without a problem in the comic books. Yet in Avengers Age of Ultron, he seemed to struggle with it just like the rest of our heroes. But according to Marvel Studios head Kevin Feige, Cap was really just being polite. He's always had the power to use Thor's magical hammer, but he just didn't want to make a scene about it at the time. But in Avengers Endgame, all bets were off, and we finally got to see Cap using Mjolnir against the Mad Titan Thanos. He's really come a long way since he was shocked to find himself fighting a god back in the Avengers. We also saw him holding Stormbreaker, but Thor wasn't quite ready to share that toy just yet. Rescue. Bad guys love nothing better than kidnapping the wives or girlfriends of superheroes in order to get their attention. Maybe they could have tried a strong-worded letter instead. Protecting your partner is part of a superhero job requirement. But Pepper Potts has stepped up to save herself and Tony Stark from time to time. In Iron Man 3, we even saw her briefly wearing Tony's armor. Sure, she wasn't exactly graceful with it, but we have a feeling those suits have quite the learning curve. Now that she has her very own rescue suit, which we saw in Endgame, we expect her super skills will only improve. Although Tony's ultimate fate might have been a surprise, he knew he wouldn't always be around to protect Pepper, no matter how he might want to. So as the ultimate parting gift, he gave her away to protect herself. Hulkbuster. Tony Stark and Bruce Banner have always bonded over their brilliant minds and their love of creating new and interesting gadgets. Sure, sometimes this has gone terribly wrong for everyone involved, but for the most part, it's been a good thing. Bruce Banner has always been very realistic about his connection to the Incredible Hulk and the fact that he's dangerous. Although some of his comrades have occasionally tried to downplay it, Bruce has always been keenly and painfully aware of the fact that he can become a serious threat in mere moments. Enter the Mark XL IV suit, better known as the Hulkbuster armor. This massive mechanical suit made its debut in Avengers Age of Ultron and was specifically designed to combat the Incredible Hulk. And Tony Stark got to test it out against the Hulk in that very movie. It's powerful enough to knock the Hulk's teeth out, and that's saying something. In Avengers Infinity War, the Hulk was reluctant to help out our heroes, and considering that the last time he hung out with them, he lost a tooth, we don't blame him. So Bruce Banner ended up putting on a set of Hulkbuster armor himself, the armor designed to be used against him in order to fight Thanos. We wonder if that was a point of contention between Bruce and the Hulk when they fused together in Endgame. Spear. Oh, the children of Thanos, we hardly knew ye, or at least the MCU versions of them. Everyone knows about Thanos' favorite child, Gamora, who he threw off a cliff in Avengers Infinity War. And then there's his least favorite child, Nebula, who got through her childhood with a few robot parts. All things considered, the Black Order seemed to do relatively well until our heroes defeated them in Infinity War. The Black Order had a pretty bad time in this movie, but none more than Proxima Midnight. She had to watch her husband, Corvus Glaive, get taken out by Vision. And to add insult to grievous injury, he did so using Corvus' own weapon. We bet you can go ahead and guess what kind of weapon it was. Sure, we know them being married wasn't mentioned in the movie, but neither was anything else about these characters. Proxima Midnight didn't do much better with her spear, since it got intercepted by Captain America, who tossed it back to Black Widow, who promptly used it to wound Corvus Clave. Maybe the Black Order could have fared better if they'd managed to keep their hands on their own weapons. Shield. Everyone knows that Captain America's shield is one of the most iconic weapons in all of comic book history. It's such an important symbol that handing it over to Sam Wilson in Avengers Endgame meant that Sam became the new Captain America. But he's far from the only person to have his hands on the vibranium shield crafted by Howard Stark oh so long ago. Even Peter Parker managed to get his hands on it during the infamous airport fight of Captain America Civil War. Not that he needs to brag about it or anything, but he pulled it right out of Cap's hands. However, we really didn't get to see Peter use the shield before Ant-Man returned it to his hero, Captain America. But later on in the movie, Steve's pal Bucky got some solid use out of it. Tony was determined to take Bucky out after learning the truth about what happened to his parents so long ago. Bucky fought for his life, and Steve fought for his best friend. At one point during the battle, Bucky used Steve's shield to bash Tony. No wonder Tony didn't want to see Steve leave with the shield once the battle was over. Ouch. Web shooters. We all know there are many different versions of Spider-Man, each with his own powers and gadgets. There's even a Spider-Man with 6 arms. Although we have a feeling we're not going to see that guy in the MCU anytime soon. There are versions of Spidey that come standard with built-in web shooters, but in the MCU, he relies on a couple of handy wrist devices to get the job done. It's a good thing Peter Parker also happens to be a genius in addition to being bit by a radioactive spider. His friend Ned Leeds doesn't have any superpowers, but darn does the kid have a lot of enthusiasm for superheroes. He begs Peter to be his guy in a chair, who helps him guide through his missions, and when push comes to shove, Ned uses Peter's web shooters to save his friend from the Shocker. Now we're glad Ned got to have this awesome moment, and we're obviously relieved Peter Parker survived, but wouldn't such a weapon require an enormous amount of strength to use properly? Maybe Marvel Studios didn't think showing a high schooler getting his wrist snapped off would go over well with the audience. War Machine. We know that War Machine is a full-fledged member of the Avengers, and he even stayed to help out during the decimation. But for a lot of the time during his career in the MCU, he's been little more than Tony Stark's sidekick and someone he can trade quips with. That's a valuable role, but it's not very heroic. There have been some times when Rhodey has challenged Tony, and even a time when he wore one of his prototype suits in Iron Man 2 before getting his own. Tony Stark knows how to throw a party, but he also knows how to make one really awkward, like getting inebriated and using your super suit to smash things. It made Rhodey so angry he got into a super suit and proceeded to smash Tony. Going to a party and putting on one of his host suits is generally considered to be poor etiquette, and could lead to very awkward situations, so don't try this in real life, folks. Even in the MCU, this just made the situation all the more awkward as Tony and Rhodey smashed up the party and each other. Black Panther suit. If you're the ruler of Wakanda, it comes with some super sweet perks. You get to commune with your ancestors, eat a special superpower-granting herb, and you even get a sweet suit of armor and tons of tech gadgets. If you don't mind fighting crime and having tons of responsibilities, it's probably pretty great. Not only does T'Challa have the warriors of Wakanda at his disposal, he also has help from his sister, Shuri. She's the brightest mind in the MCU, and she has access to pretty much unlimited resources, so you can just imagine the kind of stuff she comes up with. One of them is the Black Panther suits that give T'Challa his signature Black Panther style. But when T'Challa is overthrown by Eric Killmonger, the new ruler has access to Shuri's entire arsenal of goodies, including the Black Panther suit. Although Killmonger quickly establishes he isn't much for tradition, he just can't resist trying on one of these awesome superhero outfits, and we can't blame him. After all, he kinda won the fight against T'Challa fair and square, so there really should be some kind of out-of-bounds rule. Plus, he just looks good in gold. The Gauntlet. In Avengers Infinity War, we saw Thanos use his Infinity Gauntlet in order to snap out half of all life in the universe. Neither the Gauntlet nor Thanos escaped from the decimation unscathed, and things only got worse. In Avengers Endgame, we learned Thanos had used the Infinity Gauntlet once more to destroy the Infinity Stones so the decimation could never be undone. The job fried the Gauntlet, and Thanos wasn't looking much better. But when our heroes decided to travel through time and collect the Infinity Stones, they knew they'd have to construct something new to hold them in. The Hulk was the most obvious choice for who would wield the new Infinity Gauntlet and use it to undo the decimation. Out of all the remaining heroes, he and Thor were the strongest, and let's just say the God of Thunder had seen better days. But although Professor Hulk succeeded in undoing the decimation, he needed some help to defeat Thanos in an invading Chitauri army. So Tony Stark was forced to use his new Infinity Gauntlet to save the day, but at the cost of his own life. Even a superhuman giant like Professor Hulk got injured using it, so it's no surprise that a basic human body like Tony's just couldn't handle it. Black Widow. She may not have her own supersuit, but Black Widow has her fair share of useful gadgets at her disposal, and quite frankly, even when she just uses her fist, she's still a powerful force to be reckoned with. Natasha Romanoff has a long history of espionage, so she fully appreciates the value of being subtle and less than flashy. Sometimes the best way to use someone else's weapon is to get it into the most capable hands possible. Sure, we've seen other characters use Captain America's shield, but none with the same level of expertise as Steve Rogers himself. And considering the fact that this thing regularly defies the laws of physics, it's not very surprising. In Avengers Age of Ultron, Natasha did Steve a solid by grabbing his shield after it got left behind. It usually comes back to Cap like a giant metal boomerang, but when that doesn't happen, it puts him in a pretty precarious situation. Luckily, he had his pal Natasha to help him out. And although she may not be well versed in the art of the shield, Natasha also used it to block some incoming blows herself. We have a feeling that, although she's well versed in many forms of weaponry, shields probably aren't one of them. After all, they're kind of outdated. No offense, Cap.
Hello, and thanks for joining us here at CBR. One of the greatest MCU fight scenes occurs in 2016's Captain America Civil War. The scene in question centers around Bucky Barnes, now the Winter Soldier, working at the behest of Baron Zemo to enact a devious plot to destroy the Avengers from the inside. In the scene, the Winter Soldier squares off against Captain America, Iron Man, Black Widow, Sharon Carter, and Black Panther, and manages to hold his own against a constant barrage of attacks. Let's take a closer look at the showstopper action sequence and find out what makes it so crucial to Captain America, Civil War, and the MCU as a whole. While Bucky Barnes is restrained, Baron Zemo reads words from a book in Russian to activate the Winter Soldier and send him on his dangerous mission. Longing, Rusted, 17, Daybreak, Furnace, 9, Benign, Homecoming, 1, Freight Car. These words lock the Winter Soldier into his singular-minded mission to destroy the Avengers. It's a powerful scene, but merely sets the stage for the chaos that follows. Each matchup against Bucky illustrates the battle tactics each character is known for. Without any words exchanged, the Russo brothers summarize their positions at this point within the MCU, and it's a masterclass. First up is Captain America, who is against the Sokovia Accords. Steve Rogers is the first to land a blow against Bucky. But it seems to have little effect or he's holding back. What makes the full Winter Soldier sequence in Civil War so amazing is that it is non-stop and runs through each of the present characters' strengths and weaknesses. Without a word shared between characters, the action does all the necessary explaining. In one fell swoop, the Winter Soldier pushes each combatant to the brink, even beyond, and shows that Baron Zemo's plan might just work. In the first sequence of the fight, Steve is confronted with the heavy realization that his former friend and ally is no longer the person he once knew. The segment leads to Bucky putting a major dent in an elevator door before fully pushing Steve down the shaft. At this moment, one of Marvel's strongest heroes has met his greatest opponent. If Captain America can be said to be anything, it's loyal, even if that means taking a beating from Bucky. Tony Stark sidles up to a pillar without the aid of his full Iron Man suit, and finds the opportunity to activate a nifty wristwatch that unfurls into a powerful, gadget-filled gauntlet. The moment highlights some of the tricks up Tony's sleeve. Even without the full suit, he is still ready to take action, although because he's indoors, he can't call in the full Iron Man kit. Moving in, Bucky deflects an attack by Tony and levels the gun he swiped off a guard. Tony's gauntlet eats the bullet, but it provides a loaded moment in which Tony realizes that the Winter Soldier is playing for keeps and doesn't merely want to beat the Avengers. He wants to kill them. Even the greatest inventor of the MCU is having trouble with the brute force of the Winter Soldier. In this one moment, Tony's personal vendetta is solidified. After all, the Winter Soldier killed Tony's parents. Next, Sharon Carter kicks Bucky in his ribcage while Black Widow Natasha Romanoff charges in to deliver a follow-up knee to Bucky's gut. Neither of the two characters who join the fight have powers, but Black Widow, in particular, is an immensely talented fighter and battle tactician who knows just the right moves to take on all manner of threats, super strength or not. In rhythmic union, Natasha Romanoff and Sharon Carter put their all into stopping the Winter Soldier. Black Widow has always been an underutilized power player within the MCU, but her swift attacks and ability to collaborate are illustrated wonderfully in this brief sequence. Then, Black Panther himself, T'Challa, jumps in and offers the Winter Soldier his only real challenge in the non-stop brawl. Marking his first MCU appearance, Civil War offers one of the franchise's best heroic entrances. Even without the familiar suit, Black Panther shows he has no need for adornment. T'Challa leaps and glides with elegance, making it quite clear why he's called the Black Panther. If this were a fair fight, one-on-one without room for escape, T'Challa would absolutely win. A brief glance of Bucky's arm foreshadows the vibranium arm that T'Challa's sister, Shuri, will fashion for Bucky long after the dust of Civil War settles. In the final stretch of the scene, Bucky attempts to escape in a helicopter, but Captain America catches up with him at the last moment. In a powerful scene, Steve Rogers musters all of his strength to keep the helicopter from escaping. The Winter Soldier then arcs the helicopter to take Steve out, but the rotors hit the helipad and cause a crash. Trapped inside the helicopter, Bucky looks, for the first time, entirely helpless. He's Bucky once more, and Captain America won't give up on him. The two characters plunge into the river to meet an uncertain fate, but Steve's commitment is unparalleled. Between the Russo brothers' direction and the superlative stunt work that combine to create a high-intensity piece of action filmmaking, this scene offers a lesson for Marvel. Where most of the major fights feature the heroes in costume and facing off against threats who are likely to utilize more than just their hands and legs, the Winter Soldier shows that sometimes the most effective scenes are the ones that feel grounded. The Avengers' perseverance and dedication is on full display as they take on the Winter Soldier. Only the final unified front against Thanos has the same energy of the team working together, picking up where the other leaves off. In this non-stop scene, the Avengers are brought to their knees by a character who came closest to having the Marvel team destroy themselves.
Marvel's Avengers Secret Wars is shaping up to be one of the biggest and most groundbreaking films in the history of the MCU. With so many classic characters gone and so many more teased for the future, there's no telling what's in store for the Marvel Universe. Today at CBR, we're discussing which current heroes will likely make the cut for the latest iteration of the Avengers. With Steve Rogers, the original Captain America, happily retired, longtime partner and friend Sam Wilson, FKA the Falcon, stepped up and bore the mantle after him. As the new Captain America, Sam Wilson has a tremendous amount of work cut out for him. Not only has he needed to fill Steve's shoes, but he's needed to gain the world's acceptance as well. Captain America is always needed on an Avengers lineup, so it's very likely Sam will be present.
You're not Steve Rogers.
Equipped with his iconic metal arm and boosted with a formidable serum, the Winter Soldier has been a force to be reckoned with. After Sam and Bucky's adventures in Falcon and the Winter Soldier, fans haven't seen much of Steve Rogers' best friend. If Sam Wilson steps into the roster of the new Avengers, it's very likely Bucky won't be far behind.
Okay, how much for the arm? Oh, I'll get that up.
One of the founding members of the original Avengers, the Hulk has been a mainstay ever since. Hulk's latest appearance in the MCU has been training his gamma-powered cousin, Jennifer Walters, in her titular Disney Plus show, She-Hulk Attorney at Law. If a threat arises that needs every ounce of muscle Earth has, then there's no reason to believe that the Hulk won't lend a giant green hand.
That's my secret, Cap. I'm always angry.
With Hawkeye's retirement from superheroics within the MCU, there's a particularly large archer-shaped hole just waiting to be filled. Enter Kate Bishop, Hawkeye's protege and resident super-skilled archer. After the events of Disney Plus's Hawkeye, it was established that Kate was reaching out to other talented individuals in the hopes of forming her own super team. But with Secret Wars on the horizon, Kate's skills might be needed on a grander scale.
Please be a good one. Please be a good one.
Shang-Chi made an explosive debut in the MCU with the power of the 10 rings at his disposal. Armed with some of the most potent fighting abilities on the planet, Shang-Chi would make a perfect accompaniment to the Avengers. It's been too long since fans have seen the martial arts master in action, and Secret Wars would be the perfect means to get him back into the saddle. Who do you think will form the new Avengers team? Did we miss anyone you think would be a perfect fit? Leave a comment below, subscribe, and as always, thanks for watching CBR.